And this first hour of the show is brought to you, as always, by my good friend Ravi and his company, 220km.com. Please check them out on their website. If you think I'm looking at least 20 minutes younger than I did a few weeks ago, it's down to Ravi's Cosmetics, and I've got my order in for his foodstuffs, which are as pure as the stuff that my wife puts every day now. Every night, actually. I lie in bed getting coated in Ravi's material. It's really fantastic stuff, I've got to tell you. Thanks, Ravi, for the sponsorship. Now, the elections have come and gone, but we are no wiser. Listen, I have been an official election observer, including actually the chief British and EU election observer at many a third world election, but I can't say that I have ever seen the kind of shambles that took place in the early hours in Arizona and is still taking place yet again in Arizona. First of all, at 9 o'clock in the morning on polling day yesterday, the ink ran out in the printing machines, which either is the result of very bad planning and logistics or is evidence of something more sinister. That most populous of Arizona's polling districts, including Phoenix, Arizona, one of my favorite cities, was out of action for 3 hours on election day. Nobody could vote on the machines for 3 whole hours on polling day in Arizona. In Phoenix, Arizona, not in Mozambique or in Myanmar, not in Cambodia, but in the United States of America, in one of the richer states of the United States of America. And when the Republicans went to the court to ask that the polling be extended by 3 hours to make up for the 3 hours that was lost, the judge threw the case out. I'm not making any of that up. But it's not only the shambles of huge numbers of ballot papers discarded being found, huge numbers of late ballot papers being delivered, huge numbers of early ballot papers, which oddly are the latest to be counted and have not even yet been counted. It's the fact that 24 hours on in this massive 300 million democracy that no one knows who won. We can say that there definitely are losers. The leader of the Democratic Party himself lost his seat, the first man to do so in that position for more than 40 years. We know that the Wizard of Oz, Trump's creation, standing against a stroke victim who almost died just a few months ago, who now cannot speak, was roundly defeated. We know, of course, that all kinds of Senate and even House races are still too close to call. But why are they still too close to call? Where are the results? I've been checking roughly every 5 minutes for updated results from the United States, and I at least cannot find them. I could give you 10 subjects that I would have to plow through on the trending list to find out who won the American elections. Luckily, we have 3 experts. Chris Hedges, who in a sane America would be the Secretary of State instead of blinking Blinken, or might even be the president rather than, in his dotage, Joe Biden, who possibly doesn't even know yet how the election went. Though he did have time to phone the first Gen X member of the United States Congress, a 25-year-old by the name of Frost, who was elected in sunny Florida. But only after he had ditched his fanatical support for the Palestinian cause to do a complete 180 and end up funded by the pro-Israel lobby, aged 25, already bought and purchased. That's how it works in America. The stroke victim too is a big supporter of the state of Israel. So no reinforcement for the poor Palestinians in the US midterm elections. We know that Ron DeSantis and the Republican Party in Florida had a smashing victory. By more than almost 20 points, DeSantis crushed his Democratic challenger. And if it wasn't for his somewhat reedy voice, the picture of him as a young, thrusting governor with a beautiful young wife and 3 beautiful young children, he'd be the identikit candidate that you would look for to run for the Republicans in the elections in 24. After all, he is the undisputed king, or is he, of the state of Florida. And Florida used to be a swing state, though now it is a red fortress. There's another guy that caught my eye, J.D. Vance, a novelist in the north of the country, the author of the Hillbilly trilogy. He seems like a likely lad. That wouldn't half be a magic ticket, DeSantis and J.D. Vance. I think that they might win, Ohio being itself formerly a swing state. But I'm getting ahead of myself because Trump isn't over yet. If the Republicans, as I predict they will, end up controlling 2 out of 3 of the seats of power in the United States, the House and the Senate, albeit perhaps after a runoff in the state of Georgia again for the second time in a row, then Trump will say, well, it was me what done it. For all the propaganda that's been flying around, the Republicans will have won a significant victory, albeit not by as big a margin as the pro-Democrat media predicted that they would, with news management skills to make Alistair Campbell and Tony Blair blush. They now claim that losing both the House and the Senate by just a small number would be something of a triumph for Biden in his dotage. I don't think that Trump is finished, and we've got a poll on it tonight. Will Donald Trump be US president in 2024? Though I've got to tell you, Donald, I know you're a regular viewer, is not that great for you. The last time I looked, you were still ahead, but only very narrowly. It might well be that the torch has passed, and to your own governor. Now, in a statement made by, or at least attributed to Trump yesterday, I haven't actually seen his lips move and heard him say it, he says that DeSantis better not run in 2024, or he'll be telling us all things that he, and only he, except perhaps his wife, he darkly added, could tell you. Now, given that that's a kind of mafia statement, that might be just par for the course on Donald Trump's game. Or it might be that it foreshadows an almighty battle between the 2 Floridians in the race to be the Republican Party nominee. And in that race, right at this moment, I'm not sure, Donald, that you would win. But you never know. Politics is a dynamic game, and you change the kinetic energy just by entering a race and letting the chips fall as they will. We'll be talking, as I say, at length about the United States elections and what they mean for the rest of the world to 3 experts. So let me now segue to some other matters. In Britain, a man called Rashid Sunak has become the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom. As Joe Biden put it, go figure. Go figure indeed. Rashid Sunak won only because everybody else dropped out. And everybody else dropped out because they were afraid that Boris Johnson coming back, this time as Mr. Nice Guy, would be just too awful to contemplate. And so Sunak, without a vote being cast, by anybody for him became the British Prime Minister. He said he was going to set things back to right, especially on the honesty and integrity fronts. But in the shortest ever cabinet tenure, Sir Gavin Williamson, don't tell him your name, Pike, is out before most people even knew that he was back in. And the reason why is that he was sending obscene, threatening mafia texts to his own chief whip. Now, I've dealt with chief whips. In fact, I dealt with one of them, Nick Brown, who's been mysteriously suspended from the Labour Party for 7 whole weeks now without anyone being told why he's been suspended and what it is he's supposed to have done. Now, he was never mean to me. On the contrary, he attended our wedding, as a matter of fact, when I was no longer a Labour MP, but a Labour opponent. But he still came to our wedding. I like him, more than like him. But I would never, even when he was my whip, have dreamt of sending him a threatening text. I wouldn't have sent anyone a threatening text, but the last person in the world I would have threatened would have been the chief whip. But that's what Sir Gavin did. Now, I've been on his case, as regular viewers will know, for a very long time, ever since he was a furniture salesman who caused the end of the furniture selling career of a young married woman of his acquaintance. I've been on his case ever since that day. The fact that Rashid Sunak thought that Sir Gavin Williamson was the way to go to restore trust and integrity in the British government speaks all the volumes you need it to speak about the judgment of the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom. But it was called into question again over the Coca-Cola COP. That's right, the COP Environment Conference in military dictatorship Egypt, in the fleshpot of Sharm el-Sheikh, is being sponsored by Coca-Cola, which produces 120 billion plastic bottles every single year and is one of the greatest pollutants on the earth. A long way behind the US military, but still a gigantic polluter. But hey, it's sponsoring yet another annual freebie at which 300 private jets fly to an environment conference to outdo each other in a contest as to who could be the most green, the most woke, the biggest quack, and to hand over their own countries desperately short public money to other countries. And Rashid Sunak didn't let us down in that regard. Despite the fact that half of Britain is scared to switch on their heating on this November evening, he handed over 15 billion British taxpayers' pounds to other countries so that they could go green. Just as we're all going round, me included, cutting down trees for firewood to keep our families warm. He's handing over the dosh. And this a conference that he had earlier announced he was not going to attend. And one last, because I could go on, one last piece of doubt I want to sow about Rashid Sunak is this. We have a Royal Navy, our senior service, which thinks nothing at the drop of a baton of sailing its warships thousands of miles away in other people's waters, in the South China Sea, in the Straits of Taiwan, in the Indo-Pacific, like a latter-day Gilbert and Sullivan flotilla. There they can be found. And yet they cannot be found in the English Channel, where hundreds, sometimes thousands of people every single day are arriving on the beaches of the south of England as illegal migrants, whereafter they are whisked away to increasingly every hotel in Britain, except the five-star ones in Grosvenor, in Mayfair. But everywhere else, hotels are being wholly booked out. Wedding parties are being cancelled. Brides and grooms are told there's no room at the inn, because at £85 per night per person, we are housing thousands upon thousands upon thousands, 80,000 at the last count, of refugees, except most of them are not conceivably, cannot as a matter of definition be refugees, because half of them are Albanian citizens. Albania, a candidate member of the EU, a candidate member of NATO, a fully owned and controlled EU and NATO protectorate, hasn't been at war since 1945. And there cannot be any repression there because, hey, they're close friends of ours. So, by definition, half of the people arriving on the beaches should have been driven to the airport and flown back to Albania. Instead, they are filling the hotels of England and Wales and no doubt further beyond soon. But no sign of Sunak anytime soon, sailing to the rescue in that regard. I promise you there's very much more where all this came from. Fasten your seatbelts. It's going to be a bumpy night, as apparently Betty Davis once said.